In this video, we are going to talk about 10 different types of perfectionism. I am Pauline and I am so happy you are here because maybe you didn't even know there were several types of perfectionism, and knowing this and understanding the different types will definitely help you heal. And I'm always looking for ways to help you heal because perfectionism is not this one big abstract concept. And when you do think that it is, you kind of notice perfectionism tendencies in yourself. um, it's harder to heal. The more specific you become, the more specific you find where your perfectionism comes out the most, the easier it is to heal. And many, if not all, fearful avoidants have tendencies towards perfectionism. And it could be that you don't even really recognize that because you don't recognize yourself in the way perfectionism is described in general. So that's why we are going to talk about 10 types. And this is probably not even um, a complete list. There may be more types, but these were the ones um, that I recognized in myself and in the people going through the program. So these might be very specific to the Fearful Avoidant Attachment Style. So let's dive in. The first is things have to go perfectly because otherwise somebody will be unhappy. So this is one where you may have a parent who tends to become unhappy when things don't go the way they want. So they're not really um, they're a little bit more passive in the way they handle their disappointment. Maybe they were a perfectionist or they are a perfectionist too. So for instance, when you're on a road trip, uh, it doesn't go the way you want. Like the music isn't the music that you thought it would be, or it's raining the whole time and you thought you would sit in the car with the windows open and just enjoy the sun and the sunshine, or um, the conversations aren't going the way you thought. Maybe people are quiet or your partner is quiet and you wanted to talk and talk and talk and talk. So things have to go perfectly according to some type of image you had prior to that event. And this, I mean, this is just an example. This can go for so many things. Um, but yeah, this tends to come from a parent who uh, would become unhappy if the image that they had in their mind didn't match with the reality. And then as a child, you kind of notice that and you try to prevent that. And then you internalize that and you find yourself being a grown up and doing the same thing, because what you've learned is that when things don't go perfectly, that's bad and bad things happen. And so you kind of almost try to prevent that from happening. Um, and by doing that, you actually become unhappy yourself and try to control how everything goes. Whereas when you let this go, you just enjoy what is. You don't have this set image of what it should be. Um, and you don't compare it to that. You're just in the moment, and whatever is, that is. So that is the first type of perfectionism. The second type of perfectionism is I have to say things perfectly. And this usually comes from I have to say things perfectly to be heard, to be understood. So what this leads to is you may be mentally rehearsing what you are going to say, what you want to say, what you have to say. And this could be in situations where you're nervous. But I remember that I used to almost narrate everything that would happen in my life in my head, so that when it would come time to tell my boyfriend or tell somebody else, I will be able to say it perfectly. Um, because if I didn't, then I wouldn't be taken seriously. I would be dismissed, and people wouldn't listen to me. And this comes from that wound from childhood, that when I didn't say things perfectly with the right tone, the perfect tone and the perfect way, with the perfect words, not too long, not too short, then I would be dismissed, not taken seriously, or just not heard. So that leads to mental rehearsal and also not speaking up if you're not 100% sure that what you're going to say is perfect. So it leads to a lot of inner unrest and turmoil and anxiety around speaking up and using your voice and saying what you want and saying what you don't want. So that is definitely also a type of perfectionism, that you have to say things perfectly, say the right things, use the right words at the right time with the right tone. That's the second type of perfectionism. The third is I have to do things perfectly, which means I can't make mistakes. I'm not allowed to make mistakes. And I think this is usually the way perfectionism is described. I have to do things perfectly and failure is not an option. I can't make mistakes. So maybe this is one of the more well-known types. But the can't make mistakes part, I don't think I understood how much of an impact that has on you. If you're not allowed to make any mistakes, that is such pressure, because it is human nature to make mistakes. It is impossible to not make mistakes when you're learning and growing. So the only way to not make mistakes is completely hide and not do anything. And even in that, you probably you could say you're making a mistake in that you're not growing and learning and enjoying life. So making mistakes is just all around us. And when you have this belief that I have to do things perfectly and I can't make mistakes whatsoever, that will just lock you in a certain position and kind of rob you of your freedom to try, to play, to figure out what you want, the way you want to do it, whatever fits you, whatever matches who you are and what you want. And this usually comes from either the fear of disappointment. So what you've experienced as a child is that you disappointed people when you didn't do things perfectly. Maybe you had a parent that was just very controlling in the way that they wanted you to do things right, because they believed that if you did things right, then you would survive in this world. And because of that, when you did do things perfectly, they would cheer and be really happy. But when you didn't, they would get frustrated or impatient. And because of that, you kind of develop this belief or this idea that you have to do every single thing perfectly, whether it is the first time you do it or whether it's the millionth time you do it. You always have to do things perfectly. And this is just not sustainable. It is not a healthy way to go about life. Even though your fear brain, a part of you, believes that it is protecting you to always do things perfectly. So what really helps in healing this and releasing this is to be able to deal with the disappointment of others and recognize that that is on them. That is their view of the world. That is their fear, and it has nothing to do with you, because mistakes are human. And if somebody doesn't allow you to make mistakes, they are struggling with the same thing. It's not that that's the way the world works, that you can or have to do things perfectly. It is absolutely impossible. The thing that actually helped me, I now remember, is that I heard Michael Jordan say, everybody always talks about he named a specific number, I don't remember, about the shots I took and I made. And nobody talks about the number of shots I missed, even though they were very important. How do you say that? Like the right before the buzzer, that shot can either win the game or lose the game. And he said, I made a lot, but I also took a lot of shots and I lost. And I think the number that he said he took and didn't make was way bigger even than the ones that he did make. And I thought, if Michael Jordan, one of the greatest sportsmen of all times, fails more than that he succeeds in scoring a point, then maybe I shouldn't expect myself to score every time, to do things perfectly every single time. Then that's probably just not the way the world works. So maybe, hopefully, this helps you too. The fourth type of perfectionism focuses on I have to perform or succeed to prove my worth. I think this is another common general description of perfectionism, and this can really come out in work or in hobbies also, that you have to be the best at whatever punch needling at whatever hobby you have, and you can't enjoy it unless it goes perfectly. And so you can kind of lose yourself completely in your career or in your ambitions. But this can also be in social situations. So it could be that you feel like you have to perform in social situations and succeed in the form that people will find you interesting or find you entertaining, or that you can be the life of the party. So make a party more alive. And then when you don't succeed in that, you feel like a failure. So that can be one area that your perfectionism really comes out, that you always have this feeling that you have to perform and succeed to prove your worth, instead of you just being you and being enough, even if you're tired, even if you don't really have a lot to say, you are completely worthy of being in any type of social setting. Then the fifth type is I have to fix other people's problems, attune perfectly, know what they want before they know it. And perfect would mean if everybody is comfortable and happy around me. So you kind of take on your shoulders the responsibility of preventing anything bad from happening, anyone getting unhappy or uncomfortable around you. And that is such a big burden to carry, because that is not your responsibility. It is everyone's responsibility to do that for themselves. And it is okay if somebody is uncomfortable. It's okay if somebody is unhappy. We have this idea, and that's what we got from childhood, that when somebody is unhappy, that is a bad thing. When somebody is uncomfortable, that is a bad thing. But all of those are just human emotions, and all of those we experience. And the way you think about being unhappy or being uncomfortable has a much bigger impact on your experience than the actual emotion. Because if you are completely fine with being uncomfortable or being unhappy, when that comes to be, that's okay. That's just what it is. And this too will pass, because everything does. Every single feeling or emotion does. So when you know that it is also okay for somebody else to feel uncomfortable and unhappy. It's not on you to have to fix that or prevent that or attune so perfectly to other people that you can see it coming and make sure that it doesn't happen. That's not your responsibility, and you're actually taking away from their process, because maybe they need to feel uncomfortable for a little bit because they have to reflect on something and learn from that. So it is so logical that you do that. I don't ever want you to feel like, oh, why am I doing this? Because you did this as a child to survive. It was actually threatening if somebody would be uncomfortable or unhappy, because that could have a whole range of consequences. So that's where the fear lies. It's so logical. But now you're an adult and you have the capability to put up boundaries and to leave toxic situations. So you don't have to prevent people from becoming unhappy. If they can't deal with that, you can either, if you have the emotional space for that, be there and hold space for them. And if they can't regulate themselves at all, it's not your responsibility to do that for them and to fix them. Even more so, if you keep doing that, in a way you're enabling it, because then they still learn. And I'm talking about maybe a relationship with your parent. If you notice that you are still doing that with a parent, trying to prevent them from becoming unhappy or regulating for them, they will never learn to do that on their own, because they have learned that you will do that for them. And that just doesn't work, because it doesn't make you happy. It's not serving you, and it's not serving them either. But so this is also a type of perfectionism, that you focus on fixing other people's problems, and you have to be perfect in that, attuned to them. You have to be perfect in that. And when you don't, so when somebody becomes uncomfortable or unhappy or angry or just unregulated, that is your fault and you have failed. So that's the fifth. The sixth is, I have to look and dress perfectly to fit in and be attractive and not be rejected. Um, so this could look like trying to stay young and trying to always be fit, but not to take care of yourself and to take care of your body, but to do it because of what others think. You think your body has to be a certain way to be accepted. And when it's not, you won't be accepted anymore. And so this definitely is also a type of perfectionism where it can be really hard to grow older, because your body changes, and it becomes harder to um, kind of live up to the standard that society, which we can make a whole other video about, has decided is like what you should be. Obviously, that is just preying on insecurities and is such a very singular image. And I can go on a rant about this, but apart from what we think about it, this is where your perfectionism can come into play also. Just focusing on, I have to look perfectly, I have to dress perfectly, I have to have the exact right clothes, I have to have perfect hair, I have to have perfect skin, whatever it is. And this, like I said, is preyed upon by big companies that are trying to sell you makeup or clothes or weight loss, whatever. So this is quite this is being fed a lot. Let's just say it like that. But that is just a type of perfectionism. The seventh type of perfectionism, there are 10, so I have to kind of go faster than I want to. I can talk for an hour about every single point. The seventh one is, I have to feel perfectly. And this one is very specific to the fearful avoidant. I generally don't think that dismissives, secure attached, or anxiously preoccupied really focus on this a lot. This is very specific to the fearful avoidant. So you have to feel a certain way. You have to feel happy, but not too happy, not elated, not out of control happy, just happy enough to be comfortable for other people around you, because being unhappy, nobody wants you to be grumpy, of course. And then so you have to be happy, but not too happy, because that will be too much, and then you're not being genuine. So that is just an example of how a lot of fearful avoidants have this very narrow road or very narrow line that they're actually walking in, how they are allowing themselves to feel and not feel, constantly controlling what you feel and whether it's too much or not enough. And that is because your parent probably, or caregiver, had a just had difficulty with emotions and feelings and the way they were portrayed. And so the only way you were comfortable for them, you were okay for them, was if you were in a range of emotions that felt okay for them, that they thought would be accepted by the world, but also what they felt they could deal with. And the less they have learned to label emotions, to recognize emotions, to know how emotions work, um, and to and have learned to just allow emotions to be there, the less they've learned that, the more narrow your road was. so the more you had to control how you felt. And that definitely, for the fearful avoidant, also comes back in relationships, that you have to be in love, and you have to have these intense emotions, and you have to have them constantly 24/7, because it has to be perfect. Because if it's not perfect, then maybe you will fall out of love, and then in 5 years or 10 years or 20 years, you would have to break up or divorce them, and you would hurt other people, and you're not allowed to hurt other people because you're a bad person. That's another belief that a lot of fearful avoidants have, that is driving this. So um, this this is why you focus on your feelings a lot. You've learned that having too many emotions, or not having enough, or having negative emotions would lead to bad things, meaning your parent becoming unregulated, and maybe even becoming angry with you, or just unhappy with you, pulling back. But also, you kind of put feelings on a pedestal. I talk about feelings a lot on this channel, and I could talk even more, because I think these could be 2 videos in and of itself. um, so I'll write them down in a minute. But that focus on feeling perfectly is a type of perfection. And the healing in this is, you don't have to feel anything at any given moment. Anything that is okay. You get to feel grumpy. Just feel it completely. It's just a feeling. It's just there, and that's okay. And it will pass, like all feelings and all emotions will pass. So it's this whole relearning emotions and feelings, and um how to process them, and how to deal with them, and how to feel about them. How to feel about feelings, how to feel about emotions. um and just allowing yourself to feel anything, and not put this pressure on you to feel more in love, or to feel more feelings for your partner. All right. The 8th type is, I have to reach my full potential, otherwise I fail. And I think this also has a little bit to do with generations. I think millennials tend to go for this pitfall the most, have this tendency the most, because they've heard growing up, you can be anything you want. If you're just happy, that we just want you to be happy, but you can be anything you want. You can be president of the United States. That's not what I heard, because I'm Dutch, but that's what I hear a lot as like an example of what millennials in the United States hear a lot. So it's just an example of, you can reach for the stars, you can be anything you want. And so you feel like if you don't reach that, you're failing. If you don't reach your full potential, you're failing. And so you have to have the perfect partner, the perfect house, the perfect job, the perfect everything, because otherwise you're a failure, and it's your fault that you didn't reach your full potential, because anything is possible. It's just exhausting even to really talk about it, isn't it? And I do have to say, with everything I've healed, this is still one of my pitfalls. This specific type of perfectionism. I'm actually working on it right now to let this go once and for all. So even when you're healed, you still find these kind of pockets, or these singular beliefs, or singular things that you kind of run up against, and you're like, oh, wait, I believe this, and it's not serving me. So let's heal it. And that's awesome that you can just heal it, and then it's gone. So that's the 8th type. I have to reach my full potential, otherwise I fail. The 9th one is, people around me have to be perfect. And the closer they are to me, the more perfect they have to be. Because, and this usually comes out the most with our partner, and that's because our partner is our choice. So if our partner is not perfect in the way I think they should be perfect to be accepted by the world, then that reflects badly on me. And this is just a mirror for a parent who was too concerned with what the world thought about their parenting abilities, instead of what the needs were of their child. So this is a mirror to a childhood where you felt that your parent was ashamed of you and was critical of you because you had to behave a certain way so that they would be accepted and they would not be rejected or criticized for their parenting abilities. So you were not allowed to be out of control. You were not allowed to be a bad child, a spoiled child, or whatever child, because that would reflect badly on them. And then when you experience that and you haven't healed it yet, that just projects on your partner. You internalize that and then you project it on your partner. They have to be perfect because otherwise that reflects badly on you, because your partner is your choice. So they have to behave perfectly, be funny, be entertaining, be charming, be popular, be all the things. And what this leads to, this type of perfectionism, is just, it's the opposite of love. It will just lead to your partner never feeling good enough, always feeling criticized. Pretty much what you felt as a child, probably, for a big part. And so in relationships, this type of perfectionism is so important to recognize. And I don't, again, want you to feel bad about it, because this comes from trauma. It's just what it is. It comes from trauma. You experienced this as a child, you internalized it, and now you're doing that as an adult. And now we can heal. You're watching this video, you're willing to heal, you're taking responsibility. So this is not the time to throw a pity party, even though if you want to, go ahead. But it's just something you can heal, and it will bring you so much more love and so much more connection and so much more peace, knowing, I remember almost distinctly the moment that I realized, or it was kind of a realization and decision at the same time, I don't have to control the way people perceive Aryan, my husband, then boyfriend at the time I decided this. It's not my job. It's not my responsibility to control how other people see him, to control what he is like. Because I realized at that point that I just had an image of what he should be like, thinking that that would make him be accepted in the world. And as I got to know him more and more, and spend time with him in groups, I saw that the things that I thought would be rejected weren't a reason to be rejected. And he was doing just fine. And he had so many friends, and people loved hanging around him because he is pretty awesome. Even though he was doing these things that I had learned were not okay or were a reason to be criticized, that was just an image I had. That was just what I had learned. It wasn't truth. And so I could let that go in that moment, and that developed to a point where now, even if people would reject him, I wouldn't care. He's my person. So the 9th one is people around me have to be perfect. Then the 10th one, this is a long video. If you're still here, you are committed and dedicated, and I applaud you for that, really, truly. The 10th one is controlling external factors. So your external factors have to be perfect. You have to have the perfect house, the perfect spouse, the perfect perfect children, the perfect everything. But also everything has to go perfectly in your life. And this just comes down to you having a hard time dealing with the messiness of life and not having had the experience of support, because that is the biggest difference. If you are used to not having support and not having connection through messiness, then you will want to prevent messiness and you will want to control all your external factors. Okay, I could genuinely talk about all of this for hours and hours and hours. I won't do that because my phone already said that this was the maximum. So I am going to wrap up. If you have any questions about this, if you want me to talk more about the different types of perfectionism or just one specific type of perfectionism, please put that in the comments below. I read all the comments, and I always write down ideas for videos based on your comments. So let me know if this is interesting to you, which of the types you actually recognize. I truly am curious, because I don't remember ever seeing a list of different types of perfectionism. They may be there, I just never really found them. So these are just the ones I found and kind of collected over the years. But let me know if you recognize them, if this was valuable. As always, I want to know. And as always, I'm happy you are here. And I will see you in the next one.